Up next on Live at 5, Beyond Justice.
Simpson attorney Johnny Cochran tells the jury they can fight racism by clearing O.J.'s name.
Police find the teenage runaway who vanished before taping the Sally Show, and they arrest the man who's with her.
Find out why the phone company is moving a high-powered antenna to a graveyard.
Is exercise an alternative to hormone therapy for women?
And how healthy is the Pope? We'll ask Cardinal O'Connor that question next on Live at 5.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Sue Simmons, Matt Lauer, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4, Live at 5.
You are looking at a live picture of the Los Angeles courtroom where O.J. Simpson's defense team is wrapping up the closing arguments. And good evening, everyone. A dramatic appeal inside the courtroom and rage outside.
The father of murder victim Ron Goldman exploded in anger today. He reacted to remarks Simpson lawyer Johnny Cochran made to the jury during his final defense of Simpson. Jane Wells is standing by at the courthouse with the very latest. Jane?
Hi, Sue. Let's go right into the courtroom again right now and listen as Barry Scheck makes his case to the jury.
For good reasons. He's reviewed 23 forensic laboratories, the work of them. He's visited 7 laboratories. He plainly knows the literature in this field. He demonstrated that on cross-examination by a very fine lawyer. Couldn't ask him one question.
Barry Scheck is now touting the accomplishments of some of the expert witnesses called by the defense. It's his job to make the scientific evidence presented by the defense comprehensible to this jury, but he has clearly been overshadowed by Johnny Cochran's powerful speech this morning to the jury, a speech which perhaps hit hardest with Ron Goldman's father.
This man is sick. He is absolutely sick.
But the man Fred Goldman calls sick isn't the man he believes murdered his son. Instead, Goldman is taking aim at Johnny Cochran, and Cochran took aim at Mark Fuhrman, comparing him to one of history's greatest monsters.
There was another man not too long ago in the world who had those same views, who wanted to burn people. This man, this scourge, became one of the worst people in the history of this world, Adolf Hitler.
This man is the worst kind of human being imaginable. Someone who compares a person who speaks racist comments to Hitler, a person who murdered millions of people.
And so, Fuhrman was to take all black people now and burn them. A bomb. That's genocidal racism. Is that ethnic purity? What is that?
Fred Goldman was so furious, his wife tried to stop him from speaking.
No.
He considers Cochran a hypocrite.
Who does he choose to walk with? Guards from the Nation of Islam. He's talking about racism, and he talks about hate? Who does he connect himself with?
Words the world hears. But this is all the jury heard.
What they've done to our client is wrong. This man, O.J. Simpson, is entitled to an acquittal. You cannot believe these people. You can't trust the message. You can't trust the messengers.
And while Johnny Cochran pushed Fred Goldman's buttons, Fred Goldman's statement pushed the buttons of O.J. Simpson's sisters. They don't usually talk, and we're going to hear from them at 5:30. Live from Los Angeles, I'm Jane Wells. Back to you in New York.
All right, Jane, pretty emotional stuff. Jane will be back with legal analyst Bill Aronwall for the latest on the dramatic closing arguments later in our broadcast.
In other news, somebody is killing prostitutes in New York City, and police say they might be on the trail of a serial killer. This is the police sketch being circulated on the streets. Police say the suspect is about 5'6", 180 pounds. Detectives believe he is the one who murdered 2 known prostitutes in Chelsea and the West Side and raped another on a Chelsea rooftop.
To these crimes in that they were sexual assaults. The victims were engaged in prostitution. There was either a strangulation or an attempt to strangle the victim. There was some evidence of a sexual intercourse.
And police have put a warning out to prostitutes. In Far Rockaway, a teenage mother is charged with killing her newborn baby. Police say 16-year-old Geneva Dickerson threw her baby out of a 4th-story window at the Hamel House projects. The baby was only 4 hours old. Friends of the mother say they didn't even know she was pregnant.
I wouldn't even say she was trying to hide it. Maybe she didn't know about it herself until it happened to her. You never know.
Does that surprise you?
She was scared. That wouldn't surprise me.
Dickerson is being treated at St. John's Hospital. She's charged with depraved indifference to human life.
A Brooklyn man is under arrest tonight, charged with raping a 13-year-old girl who vanished 3 weeks ago, just prior to her appearance on the Sally Jesse Raphael show. Junior Bumbry of Brooklyn was charged with statutory rape, sex abuse, and unlawful imprisonment in connection with the disappearance of a young woman named Charlotte Young. The 13-year-old was brought to New York by her mother for an appearance on the Sally Jesse Raphael show, but walked off just prior to her appearance on the show. Her mother and Raphael made a tearful plea for her return on Live at 5. The break in the case came early this morning when police spotted Bumbry allegedly beating Charlotte. She says at first she had consensual sex with him, but when he found out she was underage, he kept her against her will, and a friend of his raped her.
Promises of peace in the Middle East. Israel and the PLO have signed an historic agreement to stop the bloodshed. The leaders were greeted with applause during a White House ceremony this afternoon. With President Clinton presiding, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chief Yasser Arafat signed the peace deal. Under the agreement, Israel turns over 27% of the West Bank to Palestinian self-rule. And on News Channel 4 at 6, Gabe Pressman will have a complete report on the peace accord, including some important historical perspective.
2 young Brooklyn men are charged with bias attacks on immigrants. Police say it's just another example of mindless violence based solely on race. Rick Leventhal reports.
This is a police photo of 68-year-old Shan Eng, one of 5 victims beaten in Bensonhurst in what cops say was a series of racially motivated attacks.
They were set upon for no other reason but for the fact that they were Asian.
2 teenage brothers who live here on 77th Street in Bensonhurst, Joe and Paul Tinarello, have been indicted on charges ranging from assault and robbery to attempted murder for beating up a Hispanic man, 3 Asian men, and 1 Asian woman in a 45-minute spree in and around Satellite Park. Several of the victims were walking to work when they were attacked. Ironically, neighbors on both sides of the brothers are Asian.
It's surprising that they call people like that.
You didn't know?
No, I don't.
It's bad news. It's outrageous. You know, nobody's safe anymore.
Police say the teens had been up all night drinking and doing drugs before they began attacking the victims one by one. All of them were punched and kicked, but one man was repeatedly smashed in the head with a boombox.
All the facial bones in around his eyes, his cheekbones, his jaw, broken, stomped into the face. He's in critical condition, yet he's still in the hospital.
Kings County DA Charles Hines, who was a special prosecutor in the Howard Beach case, is frustrated that the penalties aren't more severe.
If you do something to a human being like this, then your punishment ought to be a hell of a lot stronger or tougher than 5 to 15 years in prison.
Police say they are still seeking a 3rd suspect in the beatings. In Bensonhurst, Rick Leventhal, News Channel 4.
The suspects are free on bail. They are scheduled to be arraigned tomorrow.
Big break tonight in the case of those shopping mall robberies on Long Island. Police say a pair of suspected bandits returned to the scene of one of the crimes, beginning a wild chase in the air and on the ground from Nassau County into Queens. MG Perez is at the 105th Precinct now with that story. MG?
Matt, this investigation now involves police from Nassau County and here in Queens. At this hour, there are 2 suspects being held here at the 105th Precinct. They happen to be brothers. They're identified as 19-year-old Joseph Woodland and also 20-year-old Thomas Woodland, both suspects in a series of robberies. Late this morning, they led police on a long chase before being caught. This is where the chase ended, a Bayside neighborhood just off the LIE at exit 29. Nassau County Police and New York City Police are looking for evidence in the white Chevy Cavalier used by the 2 suspects. It's the same kind of car investigators say was used in a series of robberies on Long Island Tuesday afternoon, including in the parking lot of a Manhasset Macy's department store and at Bloomingdale's in Garden City. This morning, an employee in the parking lot of the same Bloomingdale's was targeted for another robbery. New York City cops later found the suspects in the white car in Queens. And that's when a massive police chase started on the ground and in the air. Again, this is where it ended. We should also tell you that both men are being questioned for a homicide in Manhattan last evening. In the meantime, victims of the robberies are being brought here to the precinct tonight to try to identify the men in a lineup. Reporting live in Queens Village, I'm MG Perez, News Channel 4. Back to you in the studio.
MG, thank you very much. The two suspects are expected to be arraigned in a Queens courtroom tomorrow before being returned to Nassau County.
We have much more news ahead, including the Spillane story.
Robert Spillane is one of the final three choices for New York City Schools Chancellor. We'll examine his track record and ask him about clashes in the past.
See how one woman stopped the phone company from putting a possible health hazard near her house. And Janice Huff says,
oh, yeah, throw an extra blanket on the bed tonight. A little chilly in a few spots. I'll tell you how cool coming up with the forecast. Check out tomorrow's forecast for the nation, though. 80 in Chicago, 91 in Miami, and 81 in Los Angeles.
Tonight on News Channel 4 at 6, two warring nations meet for peace.
Hopes and prayers and a new Middle East peace accord. I'll have that story at 6.
Plus, sexy subscriptions in your kids while your children's mail may shock you. Tonight on News Channel 4 at 6. Coming up on News Channel 4 at 6.
And here's what's new for you at 6. Federal authorities say a high-profile local prosecutor is a criminal. We'll tell you about the lengthy indictment. Could he be the new chancellor of New York City schools? Michael Hill profiles the Long Island candidate one day before what's expected to be the crucial vote. No matter what the pastime, the talk in Greenpoint is of the Pope. Don Williams visits the Brooklyn neighborhood that's home to so many Polish Americans. Ace has got the story of a little boy who's just a little too popular, the mail he gets. Plus, Sports Only Len will tell you about, yes, that's right, it is spanning the world, coming up at 6.
You're watching NBC4, the Tri-State News Channel. And now, Chuck Scarborough, Carol Jenkins, Al Roker, and Len Berman. This is News Channel 4 at 6.
And good evening. Chuck is off tonight. The odds are good that the defense could rest its case tonight in the O.J. Simpson murder trial. You're looking at a live picture of the courthouse in Los Angeles, where the defense team is trying to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of the jurors.